Is the contract fair? It's pretty rare we get offered contracts that are out and out illegal, but it's very often that we're offered contracts which are totally unfair. Biased completely in favour of the seller, giving the buyer no legal rights to speak of at all. And is it drafted in the most tax efficient way? Now, I'll mention this again later, but I'm not embarrassed by saying it again at this point. You can save lots and lots of money by making sure that when you buy a property, you do so in the most tax efficient way. And when we say lots and lots of money, people tend to think, £1,500, £5,000. I'm talking about saving hundreds of thousands of pounds, even on a modest property. 500,000 property, you can save 200,000 in tax in some countries simply by choosing the right ownership structure for that property. So these are big, big sums and well worth investigating. It's not always going to make a huge difference, but in many cases it can. Was what you were told true? Now, I regularly get into trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If the owner of a house or an estate agent is telling you something, the only safe assumption is that if his lips are moving, he is lying. Now, that does not mean he is lying. There are lots and lots of really good, reputable agents who will do their best to work on your behalf. But if he's telling something important to you, then you need to check whether it is accurate. He is being paid to sell the house, paid by the seller to sell the house, not to look after your interest. So if he's saying these things, I can let it for 50 weeks a year, it's only 2 minutes to the beach, yeah, right, on foot or by helicopter. Do check that it's correct. Agents make a lot of money by selling property, and you need to be alert to that. But I do repeat, that doesn't mean to say you won't be dealing with a good, reputable agent. It could be that everything they say to you checks out, but please do check it. In most places, there are local things that need to be done, which are sometimes a bit strange. For example, in France, you need a report that says whether the property's got the lead paint in it. You need to make sure all those things are done. I can't stress enough that most property transactions go through and we find relatively small problems which can be sorted out easily. But in others, there are total disasters buried in the paperwork, and you can lose all of your money. So if your lawyer comes back to you and says, you know what, this is a nightmare. There's no legal title, there's a dispute with the neighbours, there's some geological problem under the property. Why don't you go and find another property? Please listen. I know you'll have fallen in love with this place, whether it's an investment or for your own personal use, but please do listen to what they say and follow the advice. Risk and reward is something that I find most of our investor clients misunderstand. And I remind you that this is a business. You are in this to make money. So are you comfortable that you will make money? Is the risk and reward balance correct? Most people assume that there is a continuum of risk and reward. In other words, if you take more risk, you get more reward, and if you take a little risk, you'll get little reward. That is simply not true. There are many places in the world where you can get a disproportionate amount of reward compared to the risk you're taking. And there are some places in the world which, to my way of thinking, are just plain suicidal as investment locations, and it wouldn't matter how much reward I was being promised, it isn't worth the risk. So you need to be comfortable with this. Obviously, each of you will have a different threshold. What's right for me at my age will be entirely different from what's right for you much younger. So it's all about your personal circumstances and being comfortable with what you're doing. There is no one size fits all, and That again is something that clients sometimes find quite difficult to understand, but it is about a detailed assessment of you and your comfort zone, and if you've got a partner, their comfort zone. It's surprising how often the man is far more gung-ho than the wife, and we have little matrimonial disputes. Legal checks are essential. Checks on the finances are essential. Checks on the property are essential. The other things I've been talking about fall into the category of being a really good idea. To my way of thinking, not far short of essential, but some choose not to do them. So all that's simple enough, but how do you do it? Well, some things you can check yourself. And of course, the great advantage of checking yourself is that it doesn't cost you money. Whereas if you're paying a lawyer to do it, somebody else to do it, it's going to start rolling up fees. So does the area meet your requirements? Is it easy to get to? Is the climate right all year round? I can't tell you how many times I've had clients who've been going to a place year after year in the summer months and they love it, and then they go out in January and find there's a foot of snow and they're really surprised and they're not happy at all. They think someone should have looked into it for them. Well, that's the sort of work you can do yourself. Check out the seller and the agent. Have they got a good reputation? Go online. Are there any forums slagging them off, say these people don't deliver properties or cheat you? And check out any factual claims. If you're investing in a bar and they say it's going to do £2,000 a week, check it's true. And that's a job that Janie here used to do. It used to be a hardship for her. She'd be sent to a bar, sit in the bar all evening. She'd come out and say, well, I reckon they took €150 tonight, not the 3,000 that they'd been telling us that they would take. There are lots of good sources of information. For those not already familiar with them, I commend the CIA World Factbook, fantastic resource. Thank God for the Americans who spend hundreds of millions of dollars compiling this and share it for free. Look at currency sites. XE.com does a brilliant site where you can chart the ratio of one currency to another over many, many years and see what's happening. Guides.Global, of course, I have to mention, and Climate Charts is also great for looking at what the climate is in detail in a particular place. If you want to get a copy of this presentation, it is available on our website for you to download so you can pick up all of these links. Little page from the World Factbook. It deals with the country, it deals with the currency, the people, the government, the economy, and so on. Fantastic. Currency chart. Currency is ever so important when it comes to property investment overseas. I like the long-term view. If I see a currency which is going down in value against the pound, then if I buy a home there, however well the house does, it's likely to be worth less in sterling terms when I come to sell it. And of course the reverse is also true. And if I see a currency that's going up and down like a yo-yo, then it can be very tricky to sell because sometimes you want to sell when the currency is doing badly. So currency is an important factor. And climate, most of us have a comfort zone for climate. If you're thinking of an investment property to look out in the tourist market, most people who are coming as tourists will have a comfort zone. And despite what you may be told, there are many places where it's too damn hot and too damn sticky for you to get high levels of tourist volume. Guides.Global, I've already mentioned, we do guides on a number of different countries. We're adding them all the time, 100 guides or so per country, video and written. The legal checks. The legal checks are usually, of course, done by your lawyer, and generally they are pretty standard. And the lawyer can also introduce you to other people, such as the surveyor, who might be needed in your case. If you want the lawyer to check out the seller, that is not normally part of their standard service, so you have to ask them to do that, and there could be an additional fee. And if you want law advice about the best structures, tax structures, ownership structures, finance structures, again, you may find that that is not part of their standard service. So how long does it take? Generally, it takes longer than you might think or hope. And that's true in almost every country. Most countries around the world, from seeing the house to getting the keys on a resale property, will take about 2 to 3 months. Allow 3, particularly if you're living far away. Oops. It can be done more quickly. I remember seeing somebody who was desperate to buy a house, and if he didn't buy it that afternoon, the deal was going to go away, and we got the whole job job done in 4 hours. But that cost him a lot of money because we had to get people driving all over the place, going to the land registry and so on to get information. And that's not an ideal scenario. It was really, really uber urgent. It can be done. How much does it cost? Well, it varies, of course. But typically, you're talking about 1% of the price of the property, subject to a minimum for legal fees and fees of several £100,000 for checking the seller, and maybe £750 for a survey on an average property. Next steps, well, advice about your investment plan if you're going to take it. Most of our clients who've done it think it's a great idea. Then choose your lawyer. Choose your lawyer before you go looking at properties. Going to look at properties is the very last stage in this process, because there are things that you ought to be discussing before you actually find a place to buy. For example, who is going to own it? If you decide to put it in the name of your kids instead of your name, it's a completely different set of paperwork that's going to be required, and you need to be preparing for that before you go to look at the properties. View the properties. Then, most important, make a list of everything about this deal that is important to you. It's important that the winter temperature is 25 degrees. It's important that it's only 5 minutes to the beach. It's important that there is no income tax. And then give that list to the lawyer and decide between you which of you is going to check what. And most important, give you and your lawyer time to do this stuff. Do not put yourself under the cosh by agreeing with the seller that you'll complete on the deal in 4 weeks' time. Because once you've agreed that, it may not be legally binding, but you will find it difficult to row back. And that's really it. If we have any questions, I've just been given the sign. I've got 5 minutes or something to finish. But anyway, just finished. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask.